I'd like to thank the university for doing me the honor of asking me to make this graduation address this afternoon. It is an honor to be standing here after having been associated with this university in one or other capacity for the last 40 years. I spent, in these 40 years, during the 1970s, 7 years here as an undergraduate and postgraduate student. Those 7 years included some of the most tumultuous times this country has seen. The heavy hand of the apartheid government was everywhere, physically in our streets and encroachingly in our heads. It sought, through force and seduction, to make us believe in the correctness of its racial ideology. In the height of this, the completely unexpected happened. On the 16th of June, 1976, the students of Soweto took to the streets. The entire experience left us disorientated. We had questions and anxieties. Questions about whether we should become involved with the student protests, and anxieties about whether we had futures to look forward to in the country. Binding these was the inescapable image of young people with stones in hand, standing defiantly across the roads of our country from heavily armed police. Rage and impatience was everywhere. Now, why do I bring up this episode in our country's history? I do so because as a country, and right here in this university with the student protests, we're going through another moment of disorientation. I raise this question of disorientation to emphasize how important this institution of the university and its project of education is in situations such as these situations of disorientation. I was extremely fortunate to be here at the University of Cape Town in the 1970s, and to be, and I want to say this, a beneficiary of a university at its absolute best. Despite having been admitted into the university on the sufferance of a ministerial permit, and despite the fact that I was not allowed access to university facilities such as residences, I found here in and around the university a group of important interlocutors. Interlocutors are people who help you make sense of difficult questions. My interlocutors put things into perspective for me. It is important that you know who these interlocutors are, because you will not find them in standard history texts. They were the cream of Cape Town's intellectual activists. Some of them academics in the university, many of them teachers in important schools of Cape Town such as Harold Cressy, Livingston and South Peninsula. Virtually all of them were graduates of UCT. Some of them came from organizations such as the Non-European Unity Movement, such as Ben Kiss and Isaac Tabata. And others, such as Dalla Omar, became associated with the ANC. And yet others, such as Neville Alexander, worked in communities in and around Cape Town. Strikingly, these people were involved in extraordinary debates with intellectuals inside of the university. Mary Simons, Michael Legassick, Colin Bundy. Together, with all their social, cultural, and political differences, both within and outside of the university, these people created for young students like me an amazing, amazing environment. When a debate involving these people took place, and it took place regularly, took place on what we call Freedom Square. The name is gone, but it still lives on in our memories. Freedom Square is this square of grass outside of the arts block. Young people such as myself came to sit and listen in absolute awe as these debates took place. That was a golden moment in our university's history. It opened for all of us new ways of thinking about ourselves, of our identities, and of our relationships and responsibilities to one another. It helped me then to think about the country's rage. One lesson in relation to that rage was that all of us, as they were teaching these stories, all of us, every single one of us, were people of unconditional dignity and worth. These interlocutors came to explain, right here in Cape Town, almost for the first time in the entire world, and it happened here in Cape Town, what the colonial and apartheid idea of race was all about. They explained, drawing on the best thinking in biology and science, and I'm very glad that we have medical students here, the best thinking in biology and science on one hand, and in sociology on the other, that the idea, and we need to understand this very clearly, that the idea of race was an invention to be used to keep people who did not look white in a state of permanent subjection. They taught us that the color of your skin said nothing about the content of your character, your intelligence, or any of your capabilities. Dark or pale as your skin was, and curly or straight as your hair might be, you were genetically no different and certainly not inferior or superior to anybody else in the world. My interlocutors called this idea non-racialism. The power of this idea was its usefulness at both a personal and a group level. At the personal level, it helped many of us come to the awareness that our dignity was unconditional. It did not depend on the identities that history sought to impose on us. We were human beings without qualification. At a group level, and this was a deeply important lesson, it made clear for many of us how problematic and morally objectionable the idea was that we owed greater loyalty to those who looked like us, simply because of that they looked like us. I cannot emphasize enough to all of you how deeply significant this new way of thinking was. It came to liberate many of us. It freed us from the conceits of superiority and the anxieties of inferiority. No longer did we need to think with our skins. The question for today, for those of you who are graduating and for your parents, for the whole university community, is this: does UCT continue to provide the interlocutors, the sense makers, to assist you in this current disorientation which we are experiencing as a country? It is this question to which I would like to turn now, because concern has been expressed that the university in the country, and this university in particular, is not relevant anymore. It needs to be renovated, remade, and reconstituted at every level of its existence. I would be absolutely foolish to trumpet the value of the university without acknowledging that universities in this country, and actually, let me say, in most places around the world, are going through difficulties. These difficulties have to do with funding, and particularly the ways in which market realities are forcing universities to become more conscious of questions of efficiency. But the questions also have to do, as they always have, and in some ways will continue to be, with the ways in which the dominant ideas of a society come to find expression inside of the university. In terms of this, it's important for me to say that it is unacceptable when the social character of a society is unproblematically reproduced in the university. When, for example, class, racial, or gender privilege in society is accepted as being a normal feature of what a university needs to look like. Now, these are issues with which we struggle here at UCT. But, and this is the point that I wish to leave with you, this university, as are actually many universities in the country, is in many facets of itself, many dimensions of what it is all about, deeply conscious of its interlocutory mission in the time and space in which it finds itself. This university, without perhaps having fully articulated this for itself, is now working out what it means to be a post-apartheid university. What it means to live in a society which will progress beyond not just race, but all the debilitating inequalities which surround us. It is, in many parts of itself, asking the hard question of how it plays the role of facilitating sense-making for itself and especially for its students. It has, of course, many features of the South African society in which it finds itself. And so its sense-making capacity frequently finds itself constrained. But, and this is what is critical to understand, it bristles with ideas. It bristles with contestation and debate. In the midst of the incredible social, political, and cultural confusion which surrounds us, and the opportunism, corruption, greed, and disrespect for one another that this confusion generates at both a global and a local level, it continues to have extraordinary people in it, extraordinary. They come in all shapes, sizes, and guises, men and women, Muslim, Buddhist, and Jew, Christian, atheist, those with histories of privilege and those without. There is, in many parts of this university, people who are committed to putting the very best of their capacities to thinking about how they and the whole country makes itself anew. There's work that is being carried out in every faculty of this university which is seeking to help us understand, as those interlocutors did for me in the 1970s, what it means to be a human being now in the year 2015. How to accord recognition to others unconditionally, and how to live in a state of respect and regard for one another. How to manage oneself and one's relationships with others. This work is about whiteness, it's about blackness, it's about femininity, it's about masculinity, it is about violence, it's about want, it is about fracking, it is about sustainable energy, it is about spatial inequality, it is about drug discovery, and it's about the rights of ordinary people living under the aegis of traditional law. Some of this work is reflected in the theses and the projects of the graduates being honored here today. Of course, even the producers of this work need to try harder. They need to come to see where their blind spots are. And there's always more that could and should be done. But with this, even acknowledging its blind spots and gaps, I'd like to suggest to all of you that this university remains as relevant as it ever was. It provides all of us, and particularly our students, the privilege of thinking through what it means to be a new South African, and indeed a new African. New citizen of this world. In this, it offers itself as a resource to the country. Its legitimacy is in this commitment that it has to relevance. It is this that we must all continue to struggle to uphold. Thank you.